G'day guys, welcome back to Supercoach with DR and welcome to the first episode of the Supercoach Stock Market for 2023. I'm pumped, I'm excited, and this is the most important time of the year. We still have an opportunity to fill some holes in our sides, to bring in some must-have players before the first price rises. We're obviously 2 weeks in already. It's gone quick, hasn't it? For lots of us, we've been dealing with lots of carnage. There's been injuries, underperforming players, just some bad picks, to be honest. But as I said before, there is a chance to rectify things this week. If you got to boost up your sleeve, I highly recommend looking to use one of those just to make sure that your team is looking cherry ripe going into the start of the season. If you're a member of the channel, remember that you get access to all of these slides in a PDF version. I'll send those to you via email tomorrow morning. Thank you very much, as always, for your support. If you are new to the channel, what I basically do during the stockies each week is go through the players break even, their projections. We look at every relevant player from every line, from the primos to the mid prices to the rookies, and I'll give my take on their performance, whether or not they're a trade in, they're a trade out, or simply a hold. But look, there is a lot to get through this week, a lot to discuss. So I'm going to leave the intro there. And as always, we're going to start off with the 500k plus defenders. Hope you enjoy, guys. At the top of the list this week, we have none other than the King, Nick Dacos. I'm not going to go into all the numbers. I'm not going to talk about how painful it's been not to have this bloke in my side after having him in for the majority of the preseason. All I'll say is this: find a way to bring this man into your side. Oh man, I overrated the tag. After receiving zero attention from Geelong, good old Kenny said that they had a plan to shut him down. Well, that plan didn't work. He laughed at Lockie Jones and co, just demanded the football. He yells at his teammates. He's so hungry for disposals. It's not funny. He took 50% of the kick-ins last week. He's just a must-have, in my opinion. So if you don't own him, drop an underperforming primo, get rid of a dodgy mid-pricer or two, do whatever you need to do to trade him in before he gets out of reach for the foreseeable future anyway. I don't think he continues this average. That'd be asking way too much, but in my opinion, he'll be a top 6 without too many worries. And look, it'd be hard to disagree after what we've all witnessed after 2 rounds. Yes, not a lot of data, but I've seen enough. So welcome to DR's Rusty Spoons, Mr. Dacos. Next on the list is Luke Ryan. I only spoke a couple of years ago and he was a little bit up and down, but one thing we know is that he's got a fantastic ceiling. Dan Mashman, Freo Tragic, was telling me that this fella just loves having the football in his hands and wouldn't be too keen to let others take the kick-ins. And that rang true on the weekend. He took over 70% of the kick-ins after sharing them around in round 1. Interestingly, he only played on 4 times out of 7. So someone let him know that he won't score his points for that. In round 1, he scored a blistering 171 from 37 touches, 30 of those kicks, 13 marks and 4 tackles. Last week, scored the 122 from 30 touches, another high kick-to-handball ratio, as well as 10 marks. He's been a premium of the past, and Freo's chip game style in the back line is a dream for defensive Supercoach points. It's dead set like these blokes are playing kick to kick. I've got a soft spot for Freo, as I love blokes like Damo and Dan, but at the moment they're pretty boring to watch in my opinion, and they need to change things up. If they do, this could possibly affect Ryan, but if things continue in this way, then he could be a fantastic get early, an alternative to Dacos at around 30k more, but you'd be a very brave man or woman to do that. But if you already have Dacos and you need to upgrade another defender, then it is worth having a look at for sure. Mason Redman looked really good on the weekend and maybe the pick of the bunch in regards to Essendon defenders. Maybe Redman 1 week, Ridley the next. I'm not too sure, but he's only in 2.3% of sides, coming off a 118 against Hawthorn and 100 against the Suns. Averaged 23 disposals, 5 kick-ins, 6.5 marks, 3.5 tackles over the first couple of weeks. So certainly an option if you want to go there. Still a few question marks for mine, but does have a massive ceiling, which was only on display for a few weeks last year. I'm just not confident enough on my read of the pick to highly recommend either way. Dan Rioli looked really good in round 1, collecting 27 touches off half-back for 126 points. In round 2, 23 touches for only 75, a pod in around 4% of teams. Saad averaged 3 kick-ins per match over the first two. Nothing spectacular there, but full of run and carry, damaging with ball in hand, and looks like a better pick than Doherty at this stage. My numbers man, Janeth, was all over this selection in the preseason, and that's why he's one of the best in the business. 114 average over 2 is fantastic. If you're looking for a pod, you could do a lot worse, but with Govan Doherty back, when Walsh and Hewitt are fit, there are a few mouths to feed in defence. But yes, certainly a solid selection. Hayden Young, he was awesome in round 1, along with a few of his teammates. Looked like a super pick, but then fell back down to earth with a thud last week. Copped a fair hit, spent some time off the ground to recover, was banged up, copped another couple of hits. After that, geez, it was a tough week for the poor bugger. No kick-ins whatsoever in round 2. No bonus points there is a bummer. We've most likely witnessed his ceiling and his floor in the matter of a couple of weeks, hence the green and red arrow symbol. So personally, I'm going to assess over, let's just say, the next month. Jordan Ridley, just to my eye when I was watching him, seemed to be where the ball wasn't. I was like, get it across to him, switch boys, do a Freo. But just wasn't to be. BZT going down may actually affect him. Will he have to play more of a key post? It's a slight concern, but coming up against the Saints, we hope that the good scoring pattern for opposition defenders continues and Riddler cashes in, taking close to 50% of the kick-ins over the first 2 weeks, pretty much sharing those duties with Redmond. Look, do you trade him out for Nick Dacos? I would be tempted to if he is your avenue, but I wouldn't recommend looking to actively trade him out just for the sake of it. I think that there's a chance that this pick still works anyway. Jack Sinclair did not give him enough respect in the preseason. I just had in my head that Wanganeen Miller would affect him. You know, with Ross the Boss coming in, I was worried about the uncertainty there. But he's come out and really, really rewarded those small percentage of coaches that kept the faith in him. Scores of 104 and 124 to start the season is solid. 26 touches in round 1 and then up that to 33 in round 2. But a 2-to-1 kick-handball ratio is nice. Took 40% of the kick-ins in round 1 and then close to 70% of the kick-in pie this week, which is really, really handy. Attended a couple of CBAs last week as well. Little bonus there, but he is doing most of his damage, if not all of his damage down back. I've seen enough to suggest that he's well and truly in contention for a top 6 defensive average this year, but no need to trade him in yet. Cumming, taking a massive 20 kickouts in the first 2 weeks, but only played on 75% of the time, so there are actually more points on offer here, but that average is far from inspiring, so not someone that I'm personally looking at. Dawson, safe as houses, had a slowish start to the game, but then hit his straps, and he's got the ability to score really quickly. Should pretty much hover around the price, you'd think. Took every available kick in over the weekend, 6 out of 6, which was up on round 1, where he shared those duties with Brodie Smith. A really good starting pick, and that's why I've got the safe as houses symbol on him there. Sicily, after only the 1 kick out last week, he had 6 this week, so some nice bonus points, but still didn't allow him to improve on his performance in round 1. At his price, we don't trade him in, but in saying that, I expect him to hover between the 550 to 600 mark. If you started him, you should be pretty happy, as he's looking to be a top 6 defender again. And Sam Doherty, disappointing after a solid round 1. I went back and watched this game, and it seemed like he wasn't really involved in the switches down back. He was playing up the ground more, and I think that this actually hampered his ability to score. He was a bit of a Malcolm in the middle, but I wouldn't be trading him out. I know some people are considering it, but once the midfield brigade such as Hewitt and Walsh return, he should flourish down back and return to being that 105 averaging defender. Like Saad, averaged 3 kick-ins per match over the first 2, but doesn't tend to rely on those to score. Hold the faith in my opinion, but if you want to trade him to, say, a Dacos, I guess that I could stomach that. So a bit of a common theme with some of these defenders is if you don't like them, if you don't have Dacos, feel free to make the switch. On to the defenders, 250 to 500k. Dane Rampy. I was shocked when I saw how many people were looking to trade this bloke in after his massive 150 in round 1. I made a big call and said that anyone who started him or traded him in could not win Supercoach, and I stand by that. This was the biggest point-chasing trade that I've seen in a while. Now, yes, he'll make some quick cash. Yes, a score of 82 on the weekend was still okay and much better than other mid-prices around his range, but I just can't see a future where Dane Rampy will be a good selection. He doesn't have a fantastic role. I'd much rather have a McKenna type at his price point over Rampy. The scoring history isn't there. He's a great bloke, but can do some dumb things, and there'll be weeks where he'll punch out a 40. Last year, he had 7 games where he scored 52 or under, so that's a very low floor. Go for him if you want, but I'm going nowhere near him. Brennan Cox, this is an interesting pick. What a start he's had to 2023. There are always a few blokes that just come from the clouds each year. Players that we scroll past without a second thought. And the question is, can Brennan Cox be the next relevant Supercoach selection for the next 20-odd rounds? I still have doubts. Look, he's gone bang with a 154 and a 131, but last season he only punched out 200-plus scores for the whole year, and that was a 108 and a 118. In round 1, he was very close to breaking the marks record with 20. I think he was actually on 20 at three-quarter time, and the record is 24, so will definitely be hard to repeat that. Also had 30 touches, with 22 of those being kicks. Only the 20 touches last week, along with 5 marks, but was really effective. He's only had 3 kick-ins over the first couple of weeks, so not any type of monopoly there, but that may actually be a good sign depending on how you look at it. Like Luke Ryan, I do see a world where this pick works out, but with Dacos in the menu for 55k more, it makes Cox less relevant than what he actually could be. It's a really, really awkward price, isn't it? Maybe at 400, we'd have a really, really close look. And hey, if you really want to go for a pod and get Brennan Cox in, then go for it. You know, good luck. It'd take a lot of courage, but it could absolutely work out. And you could go away from the crowd and have a huge advantage there. Now, I've also broken the rules here with Jack Bowes. Only the one game, obviously, but I thought he was worth just putting up, not even for discussion, but just as a little bit of a reminder that after next week, his price will go up. So we've got another week starter on him, which is really, really nice. Played fantastic first quarter, continued to score well throughout the game, took 3 kick-ins, played on from all 3. So, look, if he scores, say, a 90-plus next week, he'll be a very popular option. Maybe, I won't even go through players yet. We'll talk about Jack Bowes next week. Campbell is a pod, talented young player with a lovely left boot, but it's probably a year too early for a breakout, in my opinion. Haynes, look, he's had 1 year of premium scoring history and then fell off the face of the earth in regards to Supercoach scoring. This is a pass for me, but he did perform really well. Jaden Hunt, after a mediocre round 1, he delivered in round 2, 98 Supercoach points, almost doubling his possession count from the previous week with 22, including 17 kicks. He'll make some quick cash, but I'd question his consistency and don't think we need to trade him in. You could if you want, though. Will Day, another interesting pick. Still a slight sort of frame, but goes in hard, which I love. CBA time increased in round 2. 4 free kicks, 4 helped his score as well, but did earn a couple of those. It still feels a little bit risky for me. We saw what happened with Mackenzie's CBAs, so although I really rate him, I think there are safer options. In saying that, though, he's one of the better mid-price options down back. Jeremy McGovern, my man Brent is all over him as a starting pick and has done really well as a pod. A sneaky chance for mine for a top 6 to 8 average, as he'll see a lot of the ball, intercepts well, likes to kick and kicks the ball long. Not one for the faint-hearted, but maybe one for those that like a point of difference and the lone wolf style of play. I have him in draft, and I'm actually pretty wrapped with that. Hunter Clark, 40% CBAs in round 1, 23% CBAs in round 2, but not really worth discussing. He simply can't score. He's got a history of random injuries, and given the fact that his price hasn't changed, you've still got time to get out of this pick, and I'd advise you to do so if you can. And Ed Richards, after a nice round 1 performance where he hit the ton, Bevo moved the magnets and he found himself up forward for large periods of the game, and that is very, very bad news. I would be staying right away from this pick for now. And again, if you don't have Nick Dacos, absolutely move up from Richards and snag the King of Collingwood. On to the defenders under 250k, and setting up the top of the list with a negative 76 break even is my man Connor McKenna. He is definitely by now. After a less than impressive pre-season, I've been extremely impressed with his form over the first 2 rounds. I thought that his run and carry was lacking, and there were potentially question marks on whether or not he was even in our best 22 come round 1. But he was one of our better performers against Port, and I saw something that I hadn't seen in the pracky matches or in the intra-clubs, and that was his run and carry. I mentioned in the Sword Play pod that he actually had a 1, 2, 3, 4. It was lovely, and that really sealed the deal for me. Wasn't as good this week, but more than serviceable and clearly entrenched in our best 22. If you don't manage to get him in this week, I think this is a real miss, and I would probably consider him to be a must-have. Looking to rise in price extremely quickly. 4 kick-ins in round 1, none this week, so that doesn't really affect his score too much. Just a great on-field option. Make sure that you get him in. Talk about a great on-field option. We have Mr. Ruben Jinbi. He has been a fantastic rookie, as expected, delivering for us down back. Averaged 61% CBAs over the first 2 weeks. A tackling beast, one of their best midfielders already, entrenched in the Eagles' best 22 and averaging a touch over 80. As an added bonus, has some DPP, which will come in handy. So I highly, highly recommend getting this bloke into your side if you already haven't. But from what I've seen so far, I can't remember even seeing a side that didn't start him. It was a really easy start. And yeah, congratulations to the Eagles. They've picked up an absolute ripper here. The next bloke, talk about a pod. Was not on my radar. I've forgotten who it was, but shout out to the legend. I will give you another shout out next week, who asked us a question on the mailbag segment of the Sword Play podcast. What do you guys think about Jack Buckley? And none of us had much of an idea. All that we knew was that he came in as a late in round 1. And given that data that we had, we thought, well, surely not at 200k. If he's a late in, job security just can't be there. But we have seen him perform extremely well over the last couple of weeks. 88 for an average over the first couple, 21 touches, 2 tackles, 5 marks there as well. And also what was really pleasing, 8 intercepts to throw in there too. If you've got the faith in him and you think he keeps his spot, absolutely go for it as a pod. I would much rather get McKenna in. That is certainly the play if you haven't got him. Maybe a Stocker, which we'll get to in a minute. But apart from those two, I think this guy actually has a fair bit of potential. I couldn't do it myself, given the fact he's so much of a pod. But hey, be the lone wolf, and you could really get a head start on some of these other players that we may have on field, such as Liam Jones that you see down the bottom there. So shout out to that legend who was on Jack Buckley. I think you can actually go for it, mate. Constable, a popular selection who's delivered us an average of just over 60, had a fair bit of the peel, particularly in week 1, but just didn't use it well. He did improve his disposal efficiency a bit last week, but still not great. 6 kick-ins in round 1, then down to 3 last week. Well, I had the most, but the Suns tend to share the love when it comes to taking the kick-ins anyway. He did get lucky, I think it was early in the 3rd. Heppel kicked it right into his lap, and then he takes a terrible option, kicks it to a 2v1 contest. His teammate gets lucky, gets a push in the back, which then leads to an effective kick from Constable. Oh man, it's funny little things that you notice. But Weller obviously made his way back into the side last week, and Constable still kept his spot on field. So we'll see how he goes over the next couple of weeks. If he holds his spot, keep him in your side, but definitely not someone that I think you need to trade into though. Darcy Wilmot, the Pepsi Max King, had a much more impactful game this week, particularly in the absence of Kitty Coleman, and that was expected. Got a few touches in the forward half of the ground. He had 13, but 12 of his touches were kicks, and many of those kicks were long and effective. He just loves to kick long to a 50-50 contest, and usually they're good Supercoach points. Always gives a great contest. 3 tackles, 16 pressure acts. Job security is solid, and he should score between a 50 to 65 most weeks and be a nice bench option for his 54% of owners. Miller Bergman, one of, if not the biggest pot on this list, 52 and a 55 in the first couple, but nothing spectacular. Mick Laney, he's had a decent start to his career, playing lockdown, roll down back. Had a few intercepts, which was nice. Looked pretty composed at level. 62 and a 48 are okay type scores, but I think 60 is close to his ceiling. Only averaging 10 touches. Did up his tackle count to 5 last week. That really saved his score, to be honest. A pod rookie that has performed okay, but no need to trade him in. Tom Cole played really well in round 1 against Roos for a 78 from 20 touches and 8 marks, but only the 52 last week, and his stats are almost cut in half, 11 touches, only 3 marks. Better options such as McKenna, if you don't have him, and no real reason to look to bring him in. Stocker, I've been pretty impressed with him. I thought his career might be over, but glad the Saints gave him a lifeline. The Blues gave up a bit for him on draft night, but that's old news now. He's been playing off halfback, as consistent as you can get with scoring, with a pair of 74s, which for a 216k defender, I think that's great. 20 touches, 9 marks in round 1, then followed that up with 18 touches and 9 marks, but also laid an impressive 6 tackles to help boost his score. I've never really rated his disposal, but hasn't been too much of a worry so far. And apart from McKenna, he's probably my most preferred defender at around the 200k mark, due to his good role, scoring potential, and job security. Looks a lot better than Nazira at the moment, and should also make some decent coin. I'm not saying to trade him in, but if you're looking for an option around the price and you've already got, as I said, Conor McKenna, then I think you can go for it. Lockie Cowan, we've all got him. Looked okay over the first couple of rounds, but a bench option for sure. Will be a bit of a slow burn, but he can sit pretty on our benches for now. Bodie Ueland, liked his game in round 1, but not so much this week. Scored 59 from 20 touches in round 1, but only backed that up with a lowly 32 points from 5 kicks, 2 marks, and a couple of tackles. Pretty easy pass. Josh Goda, I do prefer Stocker to him. A few people got on the goat after Yo went down, and he's been okay. Very consistent again over his 2 weeks. 57 and a 55. 15 disposals in both games as well. Wing half-back role is fine, but the ceiling isn't there. Not a trade out necessarily, but not a trade in. Job security looks fine for now, and I think he'll be an important part of the Roos' future. A bigger body with decent foot skills, and should only improve with every game he plays. McVee, a pretty easy pass. No need to bring him in. 23 points on the weekend means that he'll be a very, very slow burn. Talk about a slow burn. Wow, Campbell Chesser. This bloke may even lose cash the way he's going. Simply not up to it. Scores of 20 and 27, albeit sub-affected, is not good enough, and we need to move him on for another decent rookie. I've got the Subway symbol there because I think, well, I'd be shocked if he wasn't the sub next week, and that's probably best case scenario. I think there's also a high chance that he gets dropped altogether. I probably have to keep him. Oh, really frustrating, but if you can, definitely try to move him on. And last on the list here is Liam Jones. Loved his pre-season game, hated his round 1 performance, and was pretty satisfied with his round 2 performance. So a mixture of emotions there. Unfortunately, he missed a fair period of time being assessed for concussion, but he was cleared of that, managed to pull out a respectable 76. Look, I think that there were some people going into the season expecting 100 plus scores, just like he did in the Pracky match, but that was never realistic. I think 76 is absolutely okay. And remember that score of 5 in round 1 will only be in his price cycle for the 1 week, so he should be fine to hold and should start to make coin as soon as that's gone. You could even hold for this week, then reassess, possibly upgrade him to Bose after another week's data. If you traded last week, that's all good and completely understandable. Hopefully you bought in another decent player. On to the midfielders, 500k plus, only the 4 break-evens in the green, but that's pretty common for midfielders at this price point. LDU, the man up the top, now officially the king of the Kangaroos midfield. This bloke arguably broke out last year, but he's set for an uber breakout this year. What a phenomenal start. I think because I was so hot on Tom Green in this range that he was never really high on my radar, certainly on the short list, but I never seriously contemplated starting him over some other options that I like, but the man has proven me wrong. 83% CBA rate, 149 to start off for an average in the first couple of rounds. He is doing absolutely everything. Now, it's a bit of a risk this week because he is coming up against Hawthorn. The positive is, if Finn McGuinness doesn't go to him, he will have an absolute day out. You could easily slap the captaincy on him. If Finn does go to him though, yeah, I don't know how well he's actually going to deal with a hard tag. So he may punch out a lower score this week, but it just depends on what happens, what Finn McGuinness does. It's all about Finn McGuinness this week in LDU. But as a trade-in option, I think he's absolutely fantastic. And going into the future, I certainly think he's got top 8 potential. Great price at the moment as well. Tom Green, highly recommend looking to bring this bloke in as well if you do need another midfielder and you're not as keen on LDU. We all know what he did in round 1. Absolutely dominated. Couldn't back up that score this week. But remember that he did play in unbearable conditions last week. And it's a decent travel over to WA. Didn't have a lot of midfield support either. But 107 was okay under those circumstances. And 120 average, that's perfect. We've got the green bull symbol there for a reason. And his stocks are rising with every game he plays. His game is built for Supercoach scoring. Titch, another player that was in some of my preseason teams, but after watching him in the Pracky match in the intra-clubs, I just didn't think the ceiling was there to feature around the top 8. But he's had a solid start for the black and white, but 104 as an average won't quite cut it. And look, no need to bring him in, and you don't really need to trade him out. Chad Warner competing for a spot in our starting teams with the 3 blokes that we just covered, but hasn't had a particularly bright start. Not worth really going into numbers here because there are too many other better options below or above the price. Darcy Parish, the 7th highest averaging mid after a couple of rounds. A 109 against the Hawks and a 124 is okay. He didn't cop the Finn tag and had a massive 37 touches in round 1, but didn't use it overly well and only laid 1 tackle, which reflected in a lower score than that stat line suggests anyway. Last week, only the 30 touches, and I say only, but used it more effectively and upped his tackle count, to 6. So only 2% of sides, an option to keep on the watch list if you're looking for a pod. I certainly don't mind him as a player and may look to bring him in at some stage during the season. Libba, the preferred mid for CBAs, leading the doggies with 80%. We know what Libba brings, loves a contested pill, a point of difference, but there is one problem. Bevo is his coach. We can't trust him. If it's not Bont or English, I don't really want to hear about it at the moment. I'll keep him on the watch list, but no need to bring him in. Cripper, after going a 120 against the Tigers, he could manage to get triple figures last week, being stuck on 99. Look, again, not much discussion needed. If you own your hold, put on the watch list if you don't. Anderson, 92 average, makes him irrelevant with LDU and Tom Green at a similar price. The Bont, I've got the safe as houses symbol on him here. Just a really solid safe pick in my opinion. 107 and a 125 isn't fantastic, but it still puts him 8th on the list for midfielders over the first 2 weeks. The preferred CBA mid after Libba, so no worries about him playing forward. Well, I suppose there always is with Bevo as his bloody coach, but from what we've seen, they want him in the guts. Champion data love him. He doesn't need 30 plus disposals to score well and be damaging, and the best thing is, he's a real joy to watch. It's really fun to cheer him on. I hope he scores well this week, but not too well because obviously my lines to get up, and if he dominates, then yeah, it goes a long way to the doggies winning. Zach Merritt copped the McGuinness tag in round 1, handled it pretty well. To put it simply, it seems like every season there's a point in time where we can grab him for a bargain. So my advice is to wait for that moment and then snap him up. If you're an owner, don't panic, but you definitely want to see some quick improvement from a 103 average. And last one, this list before we get to the next 500k plus list is Callum Mills. Only a 35% CBA rate, which is way down on the last couple of seasons, coming off 66% in 2021 and 56% in 2022. Will the trend continue? Well, if that pattern does, 35, even 40, it's not great, is it? I think it possibly might, given the fact that you got your row bottoms and now Goulden that are being given more responsibility. A 94 in round 1, followed by a nice 123 in round 2. He's still scoring okay. He has good scoring history against his next 3 upcoming opponents. That's Melbourne, Port and Richmond. But given the uncertainty of his role, there's no way I'd be trading him in now. We simply wait, assess the role over the next month, and then make a decision as to whether or not he's worth bringing in. Clary, he's had a solid start, played a blinder last week against Lions, had some company with Jared Berry at times, but that didn't faze him, went on his merry way to a 130 plus score. 124 for an average over 2 rounds is fine. That still puts him as the 4th highest averaging mid in the game, but unfortunately his hairstyle isn't too flashy. What on earth is going on top of that noggin? It's not great, but look, again, no real need to discuss the pick as it's really simple. If you own, you hold, and if you're a non-owner, I think target him when the time is right, but does have a pretty solid fixture coming up soon, and he will be pretty close to a must-have. So will be scary as a non-owner. Just get him in when you can. Get him in when you can. Took had an uncharacteristic 10 clangers on the weekend, which really killed his chances of punching out a really decent score. Could have gone a lot higher. Doesn't seem like he's really been hampered by his interrupted pre-season. He's running well. Work rate's there, but look, again, 110 for an average, 157 for the break even. No need to bring him in now. No need to trade him out. Track, a bit of a nothing pick at the moment. It's been okay, but we can always get in cheaper at some stage, and there's a slight chance he manages to obtain DPP later on the season. So I think just keep on your watch list for now. Unfortunately, Jack Steele is got to go. Had a solid couple of weeks without being outstanding, but massive respect for him playing in the last quarter. What an absolute beast. It must have been bloody painful. So not a lot to discuss here. He's out for 4 to 6 weeks and a must sell. Jack Macrae. Daniel had 60% CBAs, which left Macrae at full forward for a stint, which is just mind-boggling. Bevo the Magnet Man just continues to outdo himself with these trademark moves and is slowly but surely killing off Macrae as an Uber premium. Last week, he had a lowly CBA rate of 41%, and it's been going down since 2021. If we look at his past CBA rates, things aren't looking great. In 2020, 74%, 2021, 77%, so that's okay, but last year, down to 64%, this year, 53%. If this trend continues, you simply can't have him as a premium selection in your side. So, look, I think he's the type of player or the type of premium, and you hate trading out premiums, I know, that you could pivot this week if you are missing one of those real must-haves. I hate doing that, but it's certainly an option. I'm not a fan of the Jack Macrae selection because I'm not a fan of his coach, unfortunately. Andy Brayshaw, far from an ideal start for owners. Not much synergy happening between the Freo mids and the Rucks, and it's hurting everyone's scores. The only players to select from Freo may be the defenders, but to be honest, I'm tempted to stay away from everyone. Not total panic stations yet for owners, but again, similar to Macrae, he could be the gateway to bring in, say, a Dacos via DPP if you don't own him. I'm not actively advocating for that, but yeah, with 173 break even, yeah, he's not going to deliver you those great captaincy scores, and he has already shown a bit of a flaw. So yeah, maybe get out of the pick if you can. Lockie Neal, oh man, this one hurts as a Lions fan and a Supercoach owner. The great man just hasn't been up to scratch. After a decent first half in round 1, he just seemed to stop. No urgency, a lack of energy, just didn't seem right. Only collected 20 disposals, which is almost unheard of for Lockie. Last week collected 27 touches, but again faded in the second half and only just reached 100 on the dot. He particularly went missing in the third quarter, basically unseen. I'm not sure if the captaincy is playing on his mind and his own game is suffering. Again, I just can't put my finger on it. I don't think dunks is necessarily overly affecting him either. For the price I paid, this is a killer. So personally, I'm moving him on, but this is very team dependent. I guarantee you he'll come out and deliver a monster within the next 2 to 3 weeks, but he is simply my best avenue to restructure and welcome Dacos into the side. He is certainly not a must trade, and I'm not actively, again, I want to make this really clear, I'm not actively advising to trade him out yourself. These are personal circumstances, and there is every chance he comes good quickly. CBA rate's still there, roll's still the same as it's always been, so not all dark clouds with this selection, but he will go down in price and lose cash quickly at this rate. Another bloke who will lose cash in the short term is my man Rory Laird, but with a 147 in his cycle and that putrid 50 out of his system after the first price changes, he will hopefully climb his way back towards the 700k mark. Lots of people completely wrote him off after round 1, but we selected him for a reason and needed to keep the faith. He delivered in spades last week. I had him as my VC, and that was absolutely fantastic. I was expecting a big response from the desk, and he's a proud man, loves to rack up the fantasy points. The mid-rotation seemed to be led off after about 5 minutes, have a rest and stay on for the rest of the quarter. In the second quarter, he got like a quick 5 disposals, but 80% of them were clangers or ineffective. But the best thing was seeing him move around the ground and actually get his hands on the pill. Just looked like himself again, and I think we can all safely say that his round 1 performance was just an outlier, put it out of our minds. Terrible conditions, and we simply look forward to some really consistent captaincy scores from Lairdy. If you plan to get him for 600k, I don't think that's going to happen, and hopefully from an owner's point of view, everyone else will have to pay up. On to the midfielders, 250 to 500k, and this is where a lot of the action lies this week. The man at the top, Will Setterfield, what a start to the season. Hats off to you if you started this bloke. He is the bigger body that Essendon have been craving since trying to recruit Dunkley, finding a lot of the pill, tackling well, 90% CBA rate. I had concerns if this bloke would actually play regular senior footy this year. After Carlton basically gave him away for nothing, but he is without a doubt solidly entrenched in their best 22, 25 touches and 6 tackles in round 1 for 99, almost hit the ton, and then last week he upped that to 28 with 9 tackles, but was much more contested as well, which was another reason for his biggest score. With a break-even of negative 49 coming into this week, he's very, very close to a must-have, and again should be one of your main priorities. I think he can go at least a 100 to 105 from here, and that's perfect for our last midfield upgrade. Only slight concern is the fact that there was a rumour he had a sore calf, was icing it after the game, but I haven't heard anything else to suggest that he won't be right for this week. So highly, highly, highly consider finding a way to get this man into your side. James Worfel, National Day ate up some of his CBAs, but still a more than serviceable 99. I'm slapping myself for this because in hindsight, he was such an obvious pick over Wanganeen Millerer. I just played this one too cute, thought I was a bit clever. I wouldn't go as far as saying he's an absolute must-have, but if you've got the Setterfield types already, I think it'd be a really solid trade-in. Only downside for me is probably a lack of ceiling. Jacob Hopper, talk about a comeback game. Those that kept the faith were highly rewarded this week. Did have one of the easier midfield matchups coming up against the Crows. A walk in the park, well, compared to Carlton anyway, so keep that in mind. But as I said last week, the role is there, good CBA rate, should give us some nice on-field points and hopefully make us some decent coin in the process. Had an identical CBA rate in rounds 1 and 2 with exactly 65% in both games, but unfortunately has already been ruled out for this week with knee soreness. Now, I'm okay with this. Well, I'm not wrapped that he's out, obviously, but I'm 100% holding. I think it's a relatively minor injury because there was talk that he may even get up for this week. Now, they're not always honest. I know this, but I don't think this is going to be one that tends to linger. I don't think anyway. That's just my feel about it anyway. But back to last game, just phenomenal performance. We know that they said in the media this week that his teammates burnt Jacob Hopper. They would actively look for him this week. And, well, that certainly occurred because, yeah, his disposals off the charts for him. So, absolutely wrapped. His price as well, this is going to be okay. People think, well, he had a 67 in round 1. That's no good. But that will be out after the first price cycle. That score that he had last week will be in his price cycle for at least 2 price rises. Now, we're not going to get that this week. That's a little bit frustrating. But my advice is hold and then just take advantage of that when he does play his next game. Not a trade in this week for obvious reasons, but certainly not a trade out. Dom Sheed leading West Coast for CBAs with 75% against North and then up to 82% against the Giants last week. Not the strongest of midfields to come up against, but an 89 and an 88 really is exactly what he needs to do to make his money. Issue is that there are others such as Walpole and Setterfield that are in front for mine, and although he should make some decent enough coin, there are too many better options. A decent pick if you start him though. Oh man, JHF. After looking like a young Nathan Buckley in round 1 and embarrassing the Lions midfield, in round 2 he looked like an old sock and gave us a stark reminder as to why it's always risky to go early on a mid-pricer. Lots of people decided to cut, say, Jones, Hopper, even Laird for this bloke, which is a disaster either way you look at it. If you started him, then again, it's a bit of a different story because you took advantage of his monster in round 1, So kudos to you, but it's going to be painful. It was always going to be an extremely difficult task to back up that round 1 performance. CBA rate was slightly down. Man, it's really tough. Do you trade him or do you hold the faith? I was never really into the pick, so I'll just leave that one up to you. Yeah, that's your decision, unfortunately. Lockie Ash shed the kick-ins with Cumming last week, although Cumming does take lion's share, as we mentioned earlier. Break-even is in the green, but I think lots of Ash owners actually traded him out last week. So for the few owners, it's not looking like an absolute train wreck, but yeah, I certainly don't love the pick. Wanganeen Miller, I went with him as a pod pick, as you know, hoping for him to be one of the main distributors out of defence, as well as taking a large majority of the kick-ins. But based off the first 2 games, it just doesn't look like working out. Apparently, he didn't realise that if you don't play on from the square when you take a kick-in, that you don't receive fantasy points. So Kama let him know that on the weekend. We saw him play on from everyone. So good on you, Kama. Owners will really appreciate that one, buddy. But look, for me, he simply doesn't demand the ball. You get Dacos, who yells and screams for it, but Nazai is just too nice. And for someone who's meant to be renowned for his silky disposal, he's butchered it a bit, and that's been reflected in his score. He'll get some defensive DPP in round 6, but so will Sheasel, so will Jay-Z, who are much, much better options. So keep him if you've got other major issues, but if you don't, I think just move him on. De Goey, after a blistering start in round 1, scoring a 130, he couldn't back it up with an 84 in a big win against Port. Only the 12 touches and 3 marks. Did have 6 tackles, but with other mid-prices at a more beneficial price point, he's one that we can just simply leave for now. Tim Kelly, another one we just pretty much skipped past. I've never been a fan of this pick, just never been a fan. He's super inconsistent, and the gap between his best and his worst is just way too big for me. And Sam Berry, a disappointing pod for those who went with him. Do yourself a favour and get out of this pick before he plummets in price. Alrighty, time to talk about some midfield rookies, and my man up the top, my man, Will Ashcroft. After a below-par debut in round 1, he decided to put on a show for his home crowd and remind us why it was a very silly idea to doubt him. Some traded him out, some had him relegated to the bench, and he really hurt those coaches. Only the 26% CBAs, which was 21% down on last week, but due to Berry spending time on Oliver for periods, both Ashy and McCluggage's CBA time was negatively affected. A very impressive heat map this week. Take a look at it, and you'll see that he was everywhere. 31 touches, 15 contested, 9 clearances, kicked a goal, and one of the best players on the ground. Disposal efficiency wasn't great, so he can improve on that, and only laid the 1 tackle. But all in all, a fantastic comeback from the young Jet, and he'll be a Supercoach star of the future. Cam McKenzie had a great pre-season, and that form continued into round 1 where he punched out a 90-plus score. Unfortunately, I think he really suffered due to a lack of CBAs this week, playing a lot of forward minutes, and as we know, a forward role isn't usually great for Supercoach. Nash and Day, I think, were responsible for eating into his CBA time, and I just hope that they don't persist with Nash. We know he's out this week, and he dished out a couple little cheap shots, and yeah, I don't really like that, to be honest. But apart from being a big body, I don't really rate Nash. I'm still comfortable leaving McKenzie on field for another week just to assess. But if he does continue to spend more time up the ground as opposed to being around the ball, then we may need to attempt to move him onto the bench. And if you got this bloke on the bench, yeah, it's a big decision. Who do you actually field? Ollie Holland's been really impressive in the last couple of weeks. Pretty hard at it. Is a great runner. Work ethic is terrific for a first-year player. A decent skill set. I think job security is okay. He's played his way into the 22 for mine, and such a massive upgrade on Lockie O'Brien. You could trade him in if you've got no other major targets, or if you want to go down from, say, a Wanganeen Miller pick. Not a must-have rookie, but would be really handy to have as a reliable M9 type option. Oscar Baker, he'll be a bit of a slow burn. Most of us have him on the bench, so I think just leave him there for now, move him on when he's ready to cull. No rush to trade in, obviously, if for some reason didn't start him, but I think most of us have. Liam Henry, not really relevant due to other options that we have at our disposal. Bytel only played the one game for 72 and looked okay, so a bit of a rule breaker here, but is under a slight injury cloud and not sure that he gets up this week, so a bit of a wait and see there. Now this next one hurts. Finn Callaghan, after a stunning performance in round 1 where he scored 101 Supercoach points, things quickly went downhill in week 2, looking good early, picking up 6 touches, then copped a bit of a hit to the shoulder, came off, spent the first 5 minutes of the second on the bench, then came back on with very minimal impact. Only stat for that quarter was a solitary tackle, and I don't even think it was a tackle to be honest, but he was obviously very sore, was clearly hampered by it. Over 7,000 coaches traded him in this week, so for me, given the fact that he's under that injury cloud, that 101 will only be in his system for the one price cycle. I think it's best to just get rid of him this week. I know it's frustrating, particularly if you did trade him in last week. For those that started him, it may be a little bit easier to stomach because at least you got that fantastic round 1 score. But look, these things happen, injuries occur. Prices haven't changed yet. And look, he's got a negative break even. So if you really want to hold on to him, you can for this week. But with Hopper out, yeah, it does make things really tough, I think. And Will Phillips, our great preseason rookie hope, faded pretty early. Came on as a sub in round 1, had an impact, scored well. And I thought that he'd earn a spot in round 2, but didn't occur. Dropped the next week and simply too risky due to his shaky job security. So unfortunately, Will's a pass for me. On to the rucks, and we've got a bit of a rule breaker up the top. Samson Ryan only played the one game, but did look good last week, mainly playing key forward, kicking 3 goals. Most importantly, has DPP status, so can create a really handy link. Let's take a close look at him this week, reassess his job security. Look, there's not much competition for that spot at the moment with Soldo out for either the medium to long term, so we can make this decision next week. Did really pass the eye test for me though, and 72 is a fantastic score and possibly a replacement for the next man, Asava Radagalia. Keep him or trade him? I'm keeping for now, but as I just mentioned, he could become Ryan next week. If you got him forward, you could drop him for Chandler. I'd definitely say to do that, but you are losing your ruck forward link, that you could possibly use later down the track. You probably selected him for that reason, so you do possibly lose a little bit of security if you do get rid of him and you don't bring in another DPP ruck forward, and there's not many of them that you could actually bring in, but look, completely up to you. Certainly hasn't set the world on fire. Decam, this man has set the world on fire, and such a frustrating non-selection for me. All I was banging on about in the preseason was a placeholder at R2, and he was my man. Scared off again though, didn't back myself in. It really does hurt, and I'm still not learning from my mistakes and taking my own advice. On the weekend, had a whopping 16 contested possessions, 5 tackles, spread well away on the ground, marked well, which has always been his strength. Had a slight rise in CBAs, 62% up to 68%, with Cox relieving for an average of 36% of the time. All signs are positive at the moment, and he is a great Gorn or Shrek replacement, as you can always swing him forward if needed, and he's guaranteed to make some quick cash. I really, really like him as a trading option this week, either in the ruck or up forward, but I think probably in the ruck for now, and then look to swing him later on. Timmy English, this is the guy that is playing on the next level here. Looking like the clear number 1 ruck in Supercoach. On the weekend, pumped out 26 hitouts and 12 to advantage, linking up with teammates all around the ground, involved in everything. But if you didn't start him, it was probably for a reason. We all know what that is, his durability and questionable pre-season. But if you've just seen enough and are now prepared to take that risk, then go for your life. If I was in the position to, I would highly consider it myself, because he's without doubt our clear number 1 ruck at the moment. And look, I think he is a decent trade-in option for Big Max. You'd be spewing if he goes down, but that's the risk that you're taking when you're selecting someone like an English. Nank Apodi's had a great start to 2023 with scores of 112 against the Blues in the season opener, and then he backed that up with a 118 against Rob last week. He's the main man in the ruck with 90% CBA rate over the first couple. That's pretty insane. In round one, Miller relieved for 10%, and then Samson Ryan relieved for 10% last week. The fourth highest averaging ruckman this year, and a real pot as I mentioned. I had him last year, and within a 3-week period, I think it was, I laughed, I cried, then I traded. That was actually looking like a master stroke at the start too, but just wasn't to be. But yeah, a really nice start from Nank the Tank. Rowan Marshall, big bounce back game from Rowan with a 129 last week. Underperformed against Shrek in round one, which can happen, but he competed well against English. It was as if they just didn't care what the other player did, as long as they were impacting themselves. But very highly owned player. I think most people that are watching this channel would currently have him in their sides. Sammy Draper, a big trap. Don't go near him. Don't consider trading him in, obviously. And I do think he is a trade out if you own him. Just find the money to go up to Darcy Cameron and get out of this pick while you can, I think. Jared Witts monstered the first week. We got an early look at his ceiling, which was pleasing for owners, but last week, nowhere near as dominant, but solid enough, scoring a 108. Was very quiet in the first half and just ahead of Flanders at the main break, but bounced back in the second half. Had 12 hitouts to advantage, bonus goal helped him, but Draper and Phillips actually did a decent job on him, I think. Only the 12 touches after amassing 27 the week before, but remember, he was playing the peanut in round one, so that's always a walk in the park, isn't it? Look, how would I describe Witts? Pretty much safe as houses if you're looking to replace Scorn. Just such a safe bet. Rob, well, Hillenberg was the relief in round one. Thilthorpe was his relief in round two. Few Crows fans have said that they would love to see Thilthorpe spend more minutes in the ruck, but not sure how the Adelaide coaches feel. Unfortunately, Rob just seems like a bit of a nothing type pick. Not a terrible scorer, but just can't match it with the big boys. Almost averaging 100 over his first couple of games, which I suppose is nothing to scoff about when I'm a bloody Shrek owner, but just, yeah, nothing really exciting, I don't think, with the pick. Brody Grundy. Well, bye-bye Gorn. Hello, Grundy. Nah, not for me. Just hasn't passed the eye test. His CBA rate will be pretty friendly, but they're just better options. He's certainly a wait and see, but hasn't done anything yet to spark my interest. And then we get to Shrek. Shrek. What a disaster. What a donkey. Had a decent battle with Rowan in round one for a half-decent score, but last week, boy oh boy, spent a large portion of the first half in the negative point zone. A 48-52% split with Jackson is bad news and something that I just didn't expect. Darcy it didn't look right. That may have been the reason for that bizarre split. They started with Jackson. It was just a nightmare. I thought it'd be a 75-25% type operation. I'm still holding on to some hope that it may still be the case, but I am very worried. If you can, look to get out of the pick. You still have time to pivot to another ruck that is on the up. Personally, I'm holding mainly because I have to. In saying that, there may be some positives still to come. He did look great in the preseason. He could return to that form. He has got a massive break even, but this is the week of all weeks to see his ceiling rise to the top level. In the last 2 weeks, Bailey Williams has made Flynn and Sherry look like they were the offspring of Gawn and Dean Cox. Surely Big Shrek has to come out and dominate this week. Surely, doesn't he? Look, if he can't do it this week, he's absolutely gone for me next week. Absolutely gone. I'll even pay up if I have to for someone like a DCAM. I couldn't have him not dominating opponents like this. But if he does punch out, say, a 140 plus, then we have definitely avoided a disaster in the short term and have at least another couple of weeks up our sleeves just to reassess him. But going to another ruck before his likely price drop, likely basically guaranteed price drop, is probably a good move, I think, going into the future. And poor old Max Gawn, really feel for owners here. He was awesome in round one, but then a 0 in round two. That would have been beyond painful. Super bad luck. But, look, a small positive is the fact that it happened this week and he didn't actually lose any cash. I'm trying to think of positives here. There's not really for owners. It's just super bad luck. But we got to move on quickly in this game, and you should probably just trade him out to either, for me, it's English, Wits, Rowan, or Decam. They're the 4 options that I like. He'll most likely be out for 4 to 6 weeks, so an absolute must-trade out option. Get one of those other blokes into your side this week. On to the forwards, 500k plus. The man up the top, Jezza Cameron, he's had a great start to his 2023 campaign. The star of the comp, but I just don't like key forwards. I know he's not your traditional key forward, but I just prefer to select those with mid-forward DPP, such as others below him on the list. Does have a child due very soon, so a bit of a risk if he misses a game, or even worse, has to leave at quarter time or half time. So a no from me, but I did have him in my top 12 for forward rankings this year. Cogs dominated round 1 and dominated quarter 1 of the second game, but after that was pretty underwhelming for his last 3 quarters of play. Was on 50 at quarter time, I'm going to say. Lots of people had him as their captain, and after laying 6 or 7 tackles in the first quarter alone, he simply slowed up. And like I mentioned with someone like a Green, he played his heart out the week before in tough conditions, so I don't blame him for fading out. Still a wonderful selection. I'd love to have him in my team. I'd probably prioritise Jay-Z or Errol though, but he's certainly a fine pick in his own right. Timmy Taranto, 80% CBA rate over the first couple of weeks, and has basically played exactly how we expect him to. Attend a lot of CBAs, as I just mentioned, has found a lot of the pill, but is butchered it regularly. Not much discussion needed. Owners should be pretty happy so far. Rosie, I actually see his score on the weekend as a positive. Spent a fair bit of time off the ground getting assessed for concussion protocols, so that obviously hurt his ability to score. So the fact that he still produced a 92, for me, is a good sign. 83% CBA rate in round 1, and then only 50% last week, but obviously that TOG was down. Similar to last week, didn't dominate, didn't play a starring role, but he still just got the job done. When he's right on his game, I'll tell you what, look out for some nice 125 plus scores. Josh Dunkley, a solid start to his life as a line without being fantastic. Still warming into it, but a 108 and a 117 is fine. 26 touches with over half of those contested on the weekend. 5 tackles, missed an opportunity for goal. Most of his disposals were in the defensive half of the ground, so we aren't really using his ability as a forward target to advantage. We know that he is a defensively minded midfielder though. Not a lot to discuss. We've all got him. Spills, Big J, Joey, Steve, a few others, and myself are going to the Lions Dogs game on Thursday night. So I'll be giving him a standing ovation every time he goes near the ball. Going to be a very, very fun night. Dylan Moore, all Australian small forward quality, but just doesn't have a friendly role for Supercoach. Somehow still manages to score well, but too many other options. Scored a 73 against the Dons and a nice 109 against the Swannies. Hawks forwards aren't really high on my priority list though, so yeah, it's a pretty easy pass for me now. Zaki Butters, like many of his teammates, had a decent round 1, but a below par round 2. Only registered the 67 points after a ton the week before. 12 touches and 1 tackle equals minimal impact, so unfortunate for owners. And it would be tempting to go down to a Zeeble, use the cash to get a Callahan type up to a Setterfield. Just a couple of options that you might want to consider, but fine to hold if you want. Remember, you selected players for a reason, but at the same time, don't get too emotionally attached. Isaac Heaney, I think he's another bloke that you can trade out. Very high break even there. Maybe a chance to jump down to, again, I keep mentioning Zeeble, but just say Zeeble type, or any one of these other blokes. Dunkley, Rosie, Taranto, I'd be more than happy to move Heaney down to any one of those players there, or obviously a Sheasler as well if you don't have him. And Tom Hawke, 519,500, 173 for a break even. Again, a pretty easy trade out. I'd just be getting out of Dodgeville while you can before the first price changes. On to the forwards, 250 to 500k. My man Jay-Z at the top. Had him in my second last preseason update, but unfortunately just second guessed myself. He's borderline must-have for a few reasons. Firstly, he could legitimately be a primo, and we've seen him average premium numbers in this role in the past. He is a couple of years older, but this role doesn't take a massive toll on the body. Hall isn't in the side, but even if he is best 22, I don't think that he really affects Jay-Z. And I've got a feeling that Clarko doesn't even see Hall as part of their future. I may be totally wrong about that though. Jay-Z's been taking the kick-ins, so there's bonus points there. And even a lack of contested possession in round one didn't stop him from scoring well. His price is super friendly for his potential output, and at worst he should make a quick 100k. Best case scenario, sees him as a keeper, which then brings me to my next point, and this is pairing him with Sheasel in defence. They're basically guaranteed to get defensive forward DPP. It's not absolutely guaranteed, but it sort of is, you know what I'm saying? How good would it be to be able to open up another defensive forward DPP swing? Moving Jay-Z down back also provides some stability if needed. So there is so much to like about this pick. I'm trading him in and think that he should be right up there with your priority trade-ins this week. Rochelle, we all know the talent he possesses, and what a combination he'll be with Rankin going into the future. Really exciting for the Crom fans. In round one, collected 18 disposals, 7 contested, laid 4 tackles, and kicked 3 goals. 116 points for his efforts there. Also pushed into the midfield, which was pleasing to see. In round 2, a very similar stat sheet, but only kicked 2-1 and registered just the 70 points. So probably too inconsistent at this stage, but a player that can produce some really nice spike scores and a fun player to watch when he's on. Tommy Powell, look, a pod pick, a talented kid, but too risky for me. Really rate him though, not necessarily as a super coach selection at this stage, but a decent draft option on the waiver if he's still available. Nettie Flanders, I say stupid sexy Flanders. I got sucked into starting him, but he's Gonski for me this week. See you later, Sammy. The role just isn't there. He actually played on ball for a fair period in the second quarter and got his halftime score up to 42. Unfortunately, then went back forward and scored 4 points in the second half. So he's got to go. If you've got bigger problems, fair enough. But if you can, move him on now. Jump on another mid-pricer or even go down to a Chandler and bank the cash. I'd be comfortable fielding Chandler over Flanders anyway. I think they'll probably produce a similar output. So that would be a move that I would probably recommend. Goulden, great selection. I swallowed my pride. Traded him in last week, which I was really happy with. Some concerns that he may not get up for the game, but had no issues with his calf. Didn't receive any attention from Finn McGuinness either, which was nice and probably expected anyway. He's 4th in line for CBAs at the moment with an exact 50% split in both games. So some really nice data there, but that's all we need for this pick to work. Parker's been taking the lion's share. I wouldn't go as far as saying that Goulden is an absolute must-have, but at the price, he's really hard to pass up. Really high ownership. That may hurt you when he has one of his big ceiling games. So highly recommend getting him in if you can. Power Pepper, Baker, I'm passing on. Even though their break-evens are in the green, I just don't think they'll be overly relevant selections. Port and Richmond supporters would hope them wrong, but I just don't see it. And look, we get into... Well, let's put it this way. It's not really pretty reading from here. I'm not going to rant about Tanner Bruin. I've done enough of that now, but he's just out of my side, and that is such a fantastic feeling. Let's keep this simple. If you own him, trade him, get him out now. He's not a good pick. Luckily, we just have time to do it before the price changes, so make that as an absolute priority. Get him out of your side ASAP. Long, he's no good. Not really worthy of discussion, but I know a couple of people that started him. Cunnington was better last week, but still most likely a trade-out option for mine with all the other great options on offer. You can keep him, hold the faith, that's all good, but Jay-Z and Sheasel are much better options in my opinion, both at a cheaper price. Can you really be running 3 North players? I'm not too sure up there. Look, a couple will get DPP, and Cunnington also has DPP himself, so I suppose that's not too bad, but look, it just makes sense to me to probably make one of those changes if you're in a position to. This is Cunnington to one of the other North boys for mine anyway. Fife, oh, he's been an absolute train wreck. The red hot start that I was expecting was as cold as ice, and he's even in doubt for the Derby. Get out of Dodgeville now. And Mr. Himmelberg was not a great starting selection, and we knew this due to his forward role. Again, get out of this pick now before it is too late. And we'll finish off with the forwards under 250k. The man up the top, Harry Sheasel. We'll keep this one short. If he isn't currently sitting in your side, pause the video, get him in now. An absolute non-negotiable must-have. He should be a number one priority this week, bar none, in my opinion, and looking to be a certain DPP recipient as well when the first changes occur. No need to go into his awesome numbers. 2 or 114s to start off his Supercoach career. Really does say it all. What an absolute gun. Chandler, if you're trading in a rookie this week, if you've already got Sheasel this is, then Chandler is definitely a man without a doubt. Really playing his way into Melbourne's best 22, even when some injured stars return. He actually plays up the ground a little, even found himself assisting in defence at times. 16 touches and a goal in round 1 for a really decent 93, and then followed that up with 12 touches, 6 marks, and a goal for 71 points last week. Also laid an impressive 7 tackles in round 1, which is evidence of good defensive pressure and work rate without the ball in hand. He'll make 50k in a blink of an eye, you'd think, if he keeps this up. So should be a great money maker. Very close to a must-have, and I highly advise that you look for a way to bring him in this week. Noah Long scored well in his first couple of games, surprised me a little, averaging more than his namesake in Ben Long, but the stat sheet doesn't look fantastic at first glance, just 10 disposals in round 1 and 7 last week, but has laid 3 and 4 tackles and used it well. In round 1, he even gave 3 free kicks away, so that could have been a 70 plus instead of a 63. I think Chandler and Sheasel are definitely our priorities, but Long is an option if you need to go down and already own that pair. DPP is handy for your swings also. My man Kammer, what a legend this bloke is. Regular watcher of the channel and a Supercoach nut himself. Comes at a bargain basement price, hence the wallet symbol there. Kicked a couple of snags on the weekend for a 70 plus score. Look, due to the nature of his role, his scoring will be inconsistent, but you could bank, say, 70k going down from a Radigalia or a King type if that allows you to make another upgrade elsewhere. So look, congrats on a great start to AFL career, mate. Very, very well deserved. Absolutely wrapped for you, buddy. Philippou, 76 and 59 to open up his account for 2023. Really talented player who certainly doesn't lack any confidence. Had 16 touches in round 1. Kicked a goal and then kicked 3 last week, but only scored the 59, which is slightly concerning. Kicked a massive bomb though, which is really exciting to see. But yeah, only the 7 touches, hasn't laid a tackle yet. So even 2 a game will increase his floor. So you're happy if you own him, but there's no need to bring him in. Jai Menzies, no need to trade him out. And again, no need to bring him in. Looking to make around 40k this week, but have a feeling that he could be a bit of a slow burn due to his role. Owen Davey, popular bench option that offers some handy DPP. Super talented player, full of X factor. Job security seems good. He has hit the scoreboard. Look, we know it's not the best role for Supercoach, but he's all good if he's just sitting on our bench for a slow burn. I wouldn't want to field him. Definitely try to avoid fielding him where possible. Had a nice first half last week, but just faded late. This is going to happen with rookies, and he's fine just to have him in the pine for now. And Joshy Bruce, question marks around where he fits in the 22, but he has found a spot in defence, and job security looks solid after the Dogs have been dealt with some defensive injuries. Hasn't set the world on fire, but just doing what he needs to do to make some cash. Obviously a mature body. What did he do last week? Well, 17 touches, 10 marks. That's a decent outing. Also had 3 tackles, which is good for a big man down back. With blokes like Sheasel, Chandler and co available to select, I don't see many going with Bruce, but I suppose that he is a realistic option if you like him. And we'll get through the last one pretty quickly. Mitch Owens is a real pod, performing well, 2-round average of 87, looking to go up over 40k if he hits a 65. That's certainly achievable if you look at that average, but look, for me, just no, you can't go there with other options. Comben looked terrific in round 1, looked like an absolute dud in round 2, so I wouldn't go there. Pedlar is another pod rookie. I think you hold him, had a decent round 1. 60 for an average isn't too bad. Allen with a 66, I think that you hold, unless you don't have Sheasel or a Chandler. I'd even go down to a Chandler if that's the only way that you can get him, if all your other forwards are performing. Fergus Green, if you had his kicking boots on last week, this could have been easily a 75 plus. So come on, Fergie, kick straight, mate, and deliver us some nice scores on the pine there. Benny King, he's averaging around what I thought he would, 45, 176k for that. Isn't fantastic. I'd pass on him. And Toby McLean, due to job security, just not a realistic pick for us this year, unless they decide to sack Bevo. So that's it for now, guys. All the best of luck with your trade ins and your trade outs for this week, and hope you have a ripping round 3. All the best, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye.